Hi there. The Story Ninja is back, and we've been scratching through our book collections, and something has popped up. Don't you just love it when little treasures reveal themselves? Well, in our house, treasures are essentially our books. So this little one has surfaced. I'm not too sure who's heard of it. Now, I have heard of John Grisham before, but actually and honestly, I haven't tackled his books. And I always thought it was for big people. But we've had one here for tweens or teens. So let's hear what it's about. This one is called Theodore Boone. So I have got a head start. I started reading this one last night and I thought, but this is definitely something I'd love to share with my tweeny teenage readers and listeners. So if you get a chair or lounge on your bed, lay on the grass, relax, maybe on the lounge floor on some scattered cushions. Are you relaxing and chilled? So let's start. Now, who is Theodore Boone, you may ask? We'll find out soon. So we're starting chapter 1. Theodore Boone was an only child, and for that reason usually had breakfast alone. His father, a busy lawyer, was in the habit of leaving early and meeting friends for gossip and coffee at the same downtown diner every morning at 7. Theo's mother, herself a busy lawyer, had been trying to lose £10 for at least the past 10 years. And because of this, she'd convinced herself that breakfast should be nothing more than coffee and the newspaper. So he ate by himself at the kitchen table, cold cereal and orange juice with an eye on the clock. The Boone home had clocks everywhere. Clear evidence of organized people, don't you think? Actually, he wasn't alone. Beside his chair, his dog ate too. Judge was a thoroughly mixed mutt, whose age and breeding would always be a mystery. Theo had rescued him from near death with a last second appearance in Animal Court 2 years earlier, and Judge would always be grateful. He preferred Cheerios. Now we know that's a cereal. Same as Theo, and they ate together in silence every single morning. At 8 a.m., Theo rinsed their bowls in the sink, placed the milk and juice back in the fridge, walked to the den, and kissed his mother on the cheek. Off to school, he said. Do you have lunch money? She asked. The same question 5 mornings a week. Always. And your homework is complete? But later she's asking it in the morning. It's perfect, Mom. And I'll see you when? I'll stop by the office after school. Theo stopped by the office every day after school without fail. But Mrs. Boone always asked. Typical mom, isn't she? Be careful, she said, and remember to smile. The braces on his teeth had now been in place for about 2 years, and Theo wanted desperately to get rid of them. In the meantime, though, his mother continually reminded him to smile and make the world a happier place. I'm smiling, Mom. Love you, Teddy. Love you back. Theo, still smiling in spite of being called Teddy, flung his backpack across his shoulders, scratched Judge on the head, and said goodbye, then left through the kitchen door. So he hopped on his bike and was soon speeding down Mallard Lane, a narrow, leafy city in the oldest section of town. He waved at Mr. Nunnery, who was already on his porch, and settled in for another long day of watching what little traffic found its way into their neighborhood. And he whisked by Mrs. Goodloe at the curb without speaking because she'd lost a hearing, and most of her mind as well. Shame, poor Mrs. Goodloe. He did smile at her, though, but she did not return the smile. Her teeth were somewhere in the house. It was early spring, and the air was crisp and cool. Theo pedaled quickly, the wind stinging his face. Homeroom was at 8:40, and he had important matters before school. He had cut through a side street, darted down an alley, dodged some traffic, ran a stop sign. This was Theo's turf, the route he travelled every day. After 4 blocks, the houses gave way to offices and shops and stores. The county courthouse was the largest building in the downtown Strattonburg. The post office was the second, the library the third. It sat majestically on the north side of Main Street, halfway between a bridge over the river and a park filled with gazebos and bird baths and monuments to those killed in wars. Theo loved the courthouse, with its air of authority, and people bustling importantly about, and sombre notices and schedules stuck to the bulletin boards. Most of all, Theo loved the courtrooms themselves. There were small ones, where more private matters were handled without juries. And then there was the main courtroom, on the second floor, where lawyers battled like gladiators and judges ruled like kings. At the age of 13, Theo was still undecided about his future, like many of you are right now. One day he dreamed of being a famous trial lawyer, one who handled the biggest cases and never lost before juries. The next day he dreamed of being a great judge, noted for his wisdom and fairness. He went back and forth, changing his mind daily. The main lobby was already busy on this Monday morning, as if the lawyers and their clients wanted an early start to the week. There was a crowd waiting by the elevator, so Theo raced up 2 flights of stairs and down the east wing. Wow, this place is huge, where the family court was held. His mother was a noted divorce lawyer, one who always represented the wife, and Theo knew this area of the building so well. Since divorce trials were decided by judges, juries were not used, and since most judges preferred not to have large groups of spectators observing such sensitive matters, the courtroom was small. By its door, several lawyers huddled importantly, obviously not agreeing on much. Theo searched the hallway, then turned a corner, and finally saw his friend. She was sitting on one of the old wooden benches, alone, small, frail, and nervous. When she saw him, she smiled and put a hand over her mouth. Theo hustled over and sat next to her, very, very closely, knees touching. With any other girl, he would have placed himself at least 2 feet away and prevented any chance of contact. But April Fenimore was not just any girl. They had started pre-kindergarten together at the age of 4, at a nearby church school, and they had been close friends since they could remember. It wasn't a romance. Whoops. They were too young for that. I agree, definitely. Theo did not know of a single 13-year-old boy in his class who admitted to having a girlfriend. Just the opposite. They wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. And the girls, they felt the same way. Theo had been warned that things would change, and dramatically. No, but that seemed unlikely. April was just a friend, and one in a great deal of need at the moment. Her parents were divorcing, and Theo was extremely grateful his mother was not involved with this case. The divorce was no surprise to anyone who knew the Fenimores. April's father was an eccentric antiques dealer and the drummer for an old rock band that still played in nightclubs and toured for weeks at a time. Her mother again raised goats and made goat cheese, which she peddled around in a converted funeral hearse painted bright yellow. Yes, eccentric. An ancient spider monkey with grey whiskers rode shotgun and munched on the cheese, which had never sold very well. Now I wonder why. Mr. Boone had once described the family as non-traditional, which Theo took to mean downright weird. Both the parents had been arrested on drug charges, though neither had ever served time. "Are you okay?" Theo asked. "No," she said. "I hate being here." She had an older brother named August and an older sister named March, and both fled the family as soon as they could. August left the day after he graduated from high school. March dropped out at the age of 16 and left town, leaving April as the only child for her parents to torment. Theo knew all this because April told him absolutely everything. She had to. She needed someone outside of her family to confide in, and Theo was her listener. How important for us to have a good friend to listen to our stories. I don't want to live with either one of them, she said. It was a terrible thing to say about one's parents, but Theo understood completely. He despised his parents for the way they treated her. He despised them for the chaos of their lives, for the neglect of April, for their cruelty to her. Theo had a long list of grudges against Mr. and Mrs. Fenimore. He would run away before being forced to live there. He did not know of a single child in town who would ever set foot inside the Fenimore home. The divorce trial was in its third day, and April would soon be called to the witness stand to testify. The judge would ask her the fateful question. April, which parent do you want to live with? And she did not know the answer. She had discussed it for hours with Theo, and she still did not know what to say. The great question in Theo's mind was, why did either parent want custody of April? Each had neglected her in so many ways. He had heard many stories, but he had never repeated a single one. What are you going to say? He asked. I'm telling the judge that I want to live with my Aunt Peg in Denver. I thought she'd said no. She did. Then you can't say that. What can I say, Theo? My mother would say that you should choose your mother. I know she's not your first choice, but you don't have a first choice. But the judge can do whatever he wants, right? Right? If you were 14, you could make a binding decision. At 13, the judge will only consider your wishes. According to my mother, this judge almost never awards custody to the father. Play it safe. Go with your mother. April wore jeans, hiking boots, and a navy sweater. She really dressed like a girl. So, not a girly girl, eh? But her gender was never in doubt. She wiped a tear from her cheek. She managed to keep her composure. Thanks, Theo, she said. I wish I could stay, and I wish I could go to school. They both managed a forced laugh. I'll be thinking about you. Be strong. Thanks, Theo. His favourite judge was the Honourable Henry Gantry, and he entered the old man's outer office at 20 minutes after 8 a.m. So Honourable Henry Gantry was a great judge. Well, good morning, Theo, Mrs. Hardy said. She was stirring something into her coffee and preparing to begin to work. Morning, Mrs. Hardy, Theo said with a smile, remembering what his mom always said. And what do we have the honour of today? She asked. She was not quite as old as Theo's mother, he guessed, and she was very pretty. She was Theo's favourite of all the secretaries in the courthouse. His favourite clerk was Jenny over in the family court. I need to see Judge Gantry, he replied. Is he in? Well, yes, but he's very busy. Please, I'll just take 1 minute. She sipped her coffee, then asked, does this have anything to do with the big trial tomorrow? Yes, ma'am, it does. I'd like for my government class to watch the first day of the trial, but I've got to make sure there will be enough seats. Oh, I don't know about that, Theo, said Mrs. Hardy, frowning and shaking her head. We're expecting an overflow crowd. Seating will be tight. Can I talk to the judge? How many are in your class? 16. I thought maybe we could sit in the balcony. She was still frowning as she picked up the phone and pushed a button. She waited for a second and then said, Yes, Judge, Theodore Boone is here and would like to see you. I told him you were very busy. She listened some more, then put down the phone. Hurry, she said, pointing to the judge's door. Seconds later, Theo stood before the biggest desk in town. A desk covered with all sorts of papers and files and thick binders, a desk that symbolized the enormous power held by Judge Henry Gantry, who at that moment was not smiling. In fact, Theo was certain the judge had not cracked a smile since he'd interrupted his work. Ooh. Theo, though, was pressing hard with a prolonged flash of metal from ear to ear. State your case, Judge Gantry said. Theo had heard him issue this command on many occasions. He'd seen lawyers, good lawyers, mind you, rise and stutter and search for words while Judge Gantry scowled down from the bench. He wasn't scowling now, though, nor was he wearing his black robe, but he was still intimidating. As Theo cleared his throat, he saw an unmistakable twinkle in his friend's eye. Yes, sir. Well, my government teacher is Mr. Mount, and Mr. Mount thinks we might get approval from the principal for an all-day field trip to watch the opening of the trial tomorrow. Theo paused, took a deep breath, told himself again to speak clearly, slowly, forcefully, like all great trial lawyers. But we need guaranteed seats. I was thinking we could sit up on the balcony. Oh, you were? Yes, sir. How many? 16 plus, Mr. Mount. The judge picked up a file, opened it, and began reading as if he'd suddenly forgotten about Theo standing at attention just across from his desk. Theo waited for an awkward 15 seconds. Then the judge abruptly said, 17 seats? Front balcony, left side. I'll tell the bailiff to seat you at 10 minutes before 9 tomorrow. I expect perfect behavior. No problem, sir. I'll give Mrs. Hardy an email. Or a note to email to the principal. Is that fine? Thanks, Judge. Thanks, Judge. You can go now, Theo. Sorry to be so busy. No problem, sir. Theo was scurrying toward the door when the judge said, Say, Theo, do you think Mr. Duffy is guilty? So who do you think Mr. Duffy is? Theo stopped, turned around, and without hesitating responded, He's presumed innocent. Got that, but what's your opinion as to his guilt? I think he did it. The judge nodded slightly, but gave no indication of whether he agreed. What about you, Theo asked. Finally a smile. I'm a fair and impartial referee. Theo, I have no preconceived notions of guilt or innocence. That's what I thought you'd say. See you tomorrow then. Theo cracked the door and hustled out. Mrs. Hardy was on her feet, hands on hips, staring down at two flustered lawyers who were demanding to see the judge. All three clammed up when Theo walked out of Judge Gantry's office. He smiled at Mrs. Hardy as he walked hurriedly by. Thanks, he said as he opened the door and disappeared. So that leaves us at the end of chapter 1, and we'll pick up on chapter 2 again. Thanks for listening, and I'm sure you've enjoyed this as much as I have. See you next time.